I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in. I've got a little bit of kind of precursory Muse business to kind of take care of, and then we'll just jump right into the reading. But I'm really happy to be the host for you guys tonight. You are in for a absolute treat, and I'm really honored to be doing this alongside Eddie. So hello, and welcome to the Muse Writers Center. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to celebrate the work of Eddie Dowe and the release of his new chapbook, I Have to Tell You Something. My name is Jeffrey Hecker, and I'm a teacher at the Muse. I teach a few different courses. I do a course on the Beat generation. I've done a course on Eastern Asian poetry forms, but I mainly deal with kind of surrealism and the Surrealist workshop. So if anybody's ever interested in that, I'll be glad to have you as a student. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you about the Muse Writers Center. We are one of the largest literary centers in the country. We offer online and in-person creative writing classes of all genres for all levels and ages. Our summer 2021 schedule is online at the-muse.org. So be sure to check out our classes and workshops. We are also in the process of reopening in person this summer, in addition to our virtual offerings. So keep an eye on the website for updates, as always. Currently, we are having open hours at the Muse from 10 to 7 on Tuesdays. So come stop by and say hello to everybody who's in there. The Muse offers tuition assistance for all of those who need it. We don't want anything getting in the way of someone who wants to learn to write, and we do not want to turn anyone away, for sure. We also offer hundreds of free literary events a year, teacher readings, book launches, writing clubs, and much more. Coming this month, we have a lot of exciting events, including an in-person writers happy hour tomorrow at 5 p.m. at Luna Maya, and a virtual author advice club meeting with celebrated author Jan Ann Krentz. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In partnership with Slover Library. For more information, you can always go to the-muse.org/events. A quick disclaimer before this reading gets started. All work read by the reader is his original work and is owned by the reader unless otherwise noted. Some of the work here today is published in print or online, and some of the work may be unpublished. This live stream today is in no way a publication of unpublished works. A recording of this event will be available on our YouTube page and on our website at the-muse.org after the event. And following the reading, and this is important, there will be a Q&A with the author. So if you're watching live in the Zoom webinar, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask a question at any time, and we will try to get your questions at the end. And I really invite you to type in some questions that you might be thinking about as you hear Eddie's words, it might be a really good opportunity to get a straight answer from the author, which is a really big deal. So I'd like to welcome Eddie Dowe, and I'd like to speak a little bit about Eddie. I want to make him blush. That's my goal tonight. I want him to turn red. So I can think of no poet I know personally more deserving of a debut collection than Eddie Dowe. Despite any coincidence, I've been friends with Ed for over 20 years. But here's 3 reasons why. Number 1, the other night, Ed and I both noticed the same Facebook post by our former Old Dominion University professor, Scott Cairns, currently teaching in the state of Washington. Apparently, Scott had finished reading the latest spring issue of Poetry Magazine and thought they might be better off calling it the Monthly Anecdote, or Anecdotes Are Us. I'm pretty certain what Scott meant by that criticism is the easy tendency for contemporary poetry to rely on the latest headline blurb or general popular gossip or opinion of the hour rather than craft poetry that's more transformative. What Scott would likely deem the everlasting spirit or the artifact, the artifact for somebody to dust off in 500 years and still extract huge meaning. Scott would always press poets in workshop for their impetus for bringing any poem into existence, more than just motivation to write a piece or even say our piece, P-E-A-C-E, but what is our personal necessity to waste graphite on poems we write, then send out for publication above the mesosphere. We never have to worry about Eddie's poems falling into the anecdotal twilight zone because Eddie's intention in his work is an obsession with the life cycle. I often feel in Ed's poems like there's a birth, living, death, and rebirth nearly always. And it's not simply a theme of Eddie's, it's how he thinks. There's a Buddhist quality to Ed that reminds me why we tended to gravitate early in our writing lives to the Beat generation, with Ed moving quickly into the realm of deep imagist. Ed doesn't automatically trust what a flower looks like. What's it look like at night during a hailstorm? What's the flower look like if I drop some salt in my eye? I would call Ed more of a confessional poet in many ways, who also uses primarily image to convey feeling, often surreal, but often realist. He accesses a lot of areas of the pool, from the shallow side entry steps to backflipping off of the high dive. Number 2, Ed is quite simply obsessed with the revision process. Many poems you'll hear tonight, I only know because Ed has labored over them for decades in a kind of self-deprivation reserved for monastic penance. One of the reasons for this, I believe, is for Ed, once a poem is made, it lives in the world with the poet. It hangs alongside the poet's head like a shirt on a laundry line, set out to dry. Though during the drying process, it could get blown off the line or rained on. And for Eddie, once the shirt is dry, it's not even the same shirt anymore. So it has to be re-examined. And this washing, drying revolution can take years and years before Eddie feels it's time to donate the shirt to somebody else to wear. He hasn't grown out of the shirt. It's just ready to be worn by another body. Number 3, Eddie's poems are kind. They are kind in comparison to so many other people's poems that are not kind. The poems are concerned about us, and they reach out to us to console us. It's too plain to say they are all elegies, though they are all elegies. The difference is, while they mourn something, they are continually offering tissues and promising us they are not going to leave us without telling us how much they care about us. It's my high honor to represent Eddie Dowe.
The Sad Thief. When we lean into our kiss, I feel the planets insist and look down from busy work. Who knew the mouth catches fire? Who knew the mouth is an air raid siren in the bombed out city of the throat? Who knew the mouth is a Sex Pistols concert? Who knew the mouth strums a stand-up bass? Your tongue, a bell ringing my teeth, my mouth a wound, a long scar needing a woman's fingertips. I am talking to myself. I'm a madman in my own asylum. My new body, a loaded gun, my old body ready to die. Each time you walk outside, the roses lift their heads inside. Cinnamon, chestnut, prairie, the bishop, echo, Captain John Ingram, Ingrid Bergman, Bourbon Queen, wedding day, first love, deep secret, shady lady, blue moon, whiskey, pink Panther, soul sister, sexy Rexy, old massa, Mr. Lincoln, rock and roll, foxtrot, gold fever, casino, happy time. They toss the long hair of their blooms and lick the air. I'm a sad thief, caught in the glow of the porch light, a child spelling his name for the first time. This kiss is the only word for the new language I must learn to speak, the earth, my witness. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. I really deeply appreciate it. All my family, my friends, thank you so much. Much love. I have to thank the Muse Writers Center and Susan for putting this on. And of course, Jeff, man, awesome words. Jeff Ecker, everybody, if you haven't checked his poetry out, he's just a great person. Amazing poetry. I've learned a lot from him over the years. And what a kind introduction. And of course, Kelsay Books. You know, I know a number of you picked up a book. I appreciate the support. You know, it is titled, I Have to Tell You Something, which I think is something that we all have something to say. And simplistic as that title might be, I do have a few things to say before my time is up. Of course, my wife and son, thanks for the support and being proud of me and what I do. And my father-in-law, Jim Meehan, years of support from him. And Tim Siebels and Luisa Gloria, much appreciation for being a mentor to me during my time at ODU as an undergrad and in the MFA program. Much appreciation. So let me read a few things from the book. I'll read a new poem. And so one of the directions I'm gonna go in, hopefully, it'll be about 10 years before I put something else together. So it's going to take me a while. I go over these. A lot of these poems that are in this chapbook are from my time in the MFA program at the beginning and at the end, and some after, and just constantly revised, just over and over and over, all the way up to the very end, really, a number of them. And one of the things I want to explore, I'm very interested in is family. And so I was born in Iceland. My mother is Icelandic. My father met my mother there in Iceland when he was stationed in Keflavik, Iceland. And so I have wonderful family in Iceland, some of them who might even be tuned in right now, even though they're on, I think, 4 hours ahead of us. So it's like 11, a little past 11 at night there. You know, I want to explore that side of my heritage quite a bit. And my father was born in South China, Maine. And I actually have a poem in the book that I'll read tonight called South China, Maine. And I kind of want to explore that. And I spent some time, one of the classes I took at ODU was a literature class, but the teacher, who I guess she was an adjunct, but one of the first nights she said, I'm not going to run this as a lit class. I'm going to run this as a folktale class. And I was a bit skeptical at first, but it ended up being one of the best classes I ever took. And out of that class, I actually interviewed my father and my mother about stories from their childhoods. And then I went on to record other family members. And so out of that, I think there's a lot to explore because I'm constantly thinking about where, you know, I come from and what that means as to who I am today. So here's one of the newer pieces I'm working on. This is the story I am told. They saw my father pissing at sunset. on the Appalachian Trail? Or just how far did my father carry my mother in his arms in her wedding dress? It seems from the background as if they had just run down the mountain, but I know this isn't possible. They seem too happy in the photograph. Or there's an Icelandic policeman looking for clues as to my mother's encounter with Charlie Pride. Exactly what did he order and what did he think of her accent? Or in every photograph of my father and his father, my father leans forward, smiling, seemingly waiting for the punchline. But I know that in every joke, someone suffers. Every joke, an apology. Or my sister, after falling from the third story of a window in Italy and back in the States with a shaved head, was mistaken for Sinead O'Connor. And I suppose if Sinead O'Connor was actually walking in Lynn Haven Mall, say, flipping through albums and mother's records, someone who knew my sister may have called out Michelle, but I'm not sure what Sinead would have answered. Or my wife in the garden among the many colored tongues of flowers isn't quite how I might mistake her for the fig, pasta, pomegranate, lemon, magnolia, maple, spruce, mimosa, dragon's breath, begonia, Persian chill, papyrus, cannabis, the limbs, petals, blooms, waiting patiently to be rearranged for the sweat to drop from the brim of her hat. Or how one of my many aunts died many times before her death, drowned in South China Lake, fallen from a moving vehicle, the death of her own children, one of them a deadhead, not quite so secretly growing pot in the back garden. Or how I once shook a president's hand, the first woman in the world elected to the presidency, how I simply walked past her until my mother grabbed me by the arm and hung me like a wet coat on a small hook of history. Or how as a very young boy I drank turpentine and was saved by my brother who ripped a racquetball in half with his bare hands and used it as a cup to scoop water down my throat. Or how my son, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, at a birthday party, chased ducks down to the lake with the other children. But when they began to throw rocks at the ducks, he stood back with such pain in his eyes. I knew for sure he would grow up to be a kind human. But this would also mean realizing that violence is a kind of joy. Let me read a couple here, short ones. This is kind of inspired by an old friend of mine who ended up doing time for bank robbery. It's called Bank Robber's Note. I am in love with you, bank teller. So lift the cool swim of your dress and call me Jesse James. The clock turns on 12, its guns drawn. I have a silver dollar in my boot heel. Kiss me. My mouth like a bullet, my spurs spinning. Keep your eyes on me. This is a robbery. I got the glasses. Some of you will notice that you've never seen me in glasses, but I just realized that I can't really see anymore. So I put these glasses on and I'm like, my God, is this how people actually see? So, all right. So this is a poem. This is not a short one necessarily. This is a poem that I collect albums, and so I was just like flipping through my record collection, and I was looking at some of the different album covers, And I thought, like, you know, it's a found poem. I decided, well, let me make a poem out of these album covers. So it's called 400 Hotels. The fathers form lines, walk to the fountain where one by one they drown themselves, bodies clanging like silver. And all of the children are screaming because it's the magician's birthday, the birth of cool, cheap thrills. What floor would you like? The weather report says the day will be electric, everything real pretty, an American beauty on every corner. Each hallway is a saucer full of secrets, and everyone's in search of Amelia Earhart. These are strange days. Translove Airlines is having a going out of business sale. Everyone receives a second honeymoon, a self-portrait at the moment of death. There's a blind man's movie in the lobby, Rocky Horror Picture Show, perhaps. 3 guests have gone missing. A rich man's wife with shadows in her shoes, a train conductor tapping his watch, a ballerina who claims to have met God in a grocery store and was given a map to heaven. In the elevator, a lunatic owl heals its broken wings, always a young boy holding a package with no address and a prescription from Mr. Crowley. Always the laughter of the waitress on roller skates, balancing dirty plates, the piano player begging the man in the pimp suit not to shoot him. In one room, the giant head of Gandhi rises out of the clouds to watch a naked woman sleep. Around the pool, a marching band gathers, searching for their tuba player. An Icelandic beauty pageant winner in her room on the 13th floor adjusts her crown. Here comes the mime juggling 3 red apples while the resident doctor checks the full tilt boogie of his heartbeat. Someone needs to call the repairman. The hotel is leaking and the little girl thinks it's funny to throw her glass of milk onto the carpet. At the check-in desk, 2 men shake hands, one of them on fire. The deal's been made. When the entrance doors swing open, the host stands ready, handing out masks to the new guests. Yeah, appreciate the love with the comments, y'all. All right, let's see. Departure, a junkie's dream. In the departure of a wasp, a blue delphinium arrives. Yes, even the wasps have discovered their hips, and why not? The house floats a guitar in a stampede of light. Shadows go no farther than the edge of the yard. A junkie in a red jacket smokes by the mailbox. The moon seems savage, saddled by stars, and the brown dog lifts her nose. Inside, nodding out, the husband and wife in a bubble bath. He lights the bottom of the spoon, needle on the toilet seat, tie tightened around her arm. All right, so I'll read this one. This is one that generally gets a few laughs when I read it initially. And yeah, pretty much everywhere I read, the first few lines, people kind of chuckle. So, and probably it's true to a certain extent. For those of you who know me, you probably wanted to murder me at some point in time. Genesis. My wife wants to murder me. I've heard her speak at the window another man's name. The evidence is everywhere. The kitchen knife on the dinner plate, her high heels, guarding the door, our dog growling from the garage. I never sleep. Each morning, a different witness stands to testify. Each morning, I'm covered with clay. The bed rattles beneath me. Her wedding dress marches from the closet, and the novels confess their resolutions. I live like a blind man, listening to water boil on the stove, folding my shirts in the dark. Outside, animals are born, and promenading out of the lake in a white tuxedo, boutonniere pinned to his lapel, the man who has come to take my place. I know Jeff talked about in his introduction, rebirth, and ultimately that's what that is. I mean, I rarely, people ask me what a poem means. I rarely give them an answer. With that one, I would say that is ultimately me, right? And I being reborn, coming out of the lake, and I think that we can all relate to that. Like we're evolving constantly, right? And call it being reborn if you want to go that far with it. That's symbolic, but it is what it is, right? You could say we're reborn every day or what have you, but we're constantly changing, or ultimately we should be looking for ways to change, and at least in some respect. And I know it's not easy. All right, let's we got time for just a few more, and then I guess Jeff is gonna do some questions, maybe 10 more minutes. Hang with me. I know if poetry's not your thing, sometimes, kind of nodding in and out. Let's see. How about this one? Let's do this one. All right. Burden. 1. I am chasing our child through a garden of thistle and blazing stars. The dire diamond of summer heat surrounds me. 5 fingers in the foxglove, honeysuckle, hornets in the hibiscus. Somehow this morning he is in our bed under the sheets looking for his hands. I was beginning to give up on you, he says. I am ready to be named. 2. In the shade of the Judas tree, among the slender blue flags nodding their necks, among the trumpets, turtle heads, jack in the pulpit, we find a bird, a cardinal, like a tinder flame. Is it dead? He asks. I cannot answer. My eyes are in the thorn bush, and another child is pulling himself out of my mouth. 3. Having been lost for so long, he enters each room, demands to know where we have been, why he could not find us. We ask forgiveness. Milkweed spilling from his hair, Galax and Arrowhead, Adam and Eve under the maple. We did not know you would live. We did not know you would grow. All right. Let's see. Let's do this one. This is a newer one I'm working on. And again, you'll see a comment. I'm just talking about family in these new ones. And it ultimately is going to be Iceland and Maine, Iceland and South China, Maine. All right, so this is, and look, I'll say this, and I know, my mother's listening and some other family members are listening. I told my aunt about, I'll read 3 more poems, but I told one of them I'll read is South China, Maine. But, I told one of my aunts, I said, hey, listen, I wrote this poem, South China, Maine. I don't think everything that I wrote is true. And, and she said, well, not everybody in South China, Maine tells the truth. So I appreciated that. Like, playing fast and loose with the truth. I mean, because I only know what I've been told, right? You know, and depending on who you hear the story from, you know, details change. And so ultimately the version that I'm telling is my truth, I suppose. But I certainly don't want to do, you know, I don't want to offend any family members. And so I'm always, you know, hopefully open to conversations with, and I'll be able to talk to some family members and get the details. But again, you hear one detail from one family member and the next family member tells you something a little bit different. So there's always this in between. We're creating myths out of our histories. All right. It was Halloween night. Must have been cold in South China, Maine. Perhaps Edmund and Milton and the rest of the storytellers were still playing cribbage in the basement, Prince Albert in their pipes, coffee steam rising with cane liquor, chuckling at a joke about the wife who lost her ring in the cucumbers. Alice and maybe a husband's wife or two, aprons smoothed out at the kitchen table, spreading the gossip of the day, with their own cups of coffee and slices of apple and blueberry pie, and who knows, maybe one of the ladies pulled a flask from her bra, just enough to shake the dew off the lily. And their children, all now grown, one awaiting orders, the other joined the Navy after being convinced that he would die in Vietnam if he chose the foxhole over a warm bed, and still many years away from his heart attack. One lovely, without the least thought of the cancer which would steal her brown curls, and the other six, restless for love, without the least thought of their own parents' death, of old age or whatever disease steals the memory or makes a working man's hands callous, the snow falling over the barns and country roads, over the already frozen 3-mile pond, China Lake, and just a few lights throughout the town, China children sorting through their candy in the special quiet that comes to the New England countryside, the dull clapping from a TV game show, a radio news broadcast, a brother or sister being chided into the tub. And just earlier, there'd been the Halloween dance, a haunted house at the fire station, apple bobbing and pin the wheel on the ghost, I suppose. And down at Dinsmore's farm, the young men and women were having a party. George Washington, a ballerina, a bear, and who knows, maybe Elvis or an alien or Abe Lincoln. But the men were volunteer firemen, and the call came out, a barn fire. And through the snow and swamp they ran, one losing her shoes on the way and one losing his wig, and to the station and then to the abandoned barn, probably lit by a few teenage boys. And there they stood, and they let it burn because there was no saving it. This ballerina, this bear, George Washington, Abe Lincoln, an alien, they just let it burn. And don't we all wish we could just let it burn wherever we are, whatever it is, just let it burn? All right. I think we got time for just a couple more poems. I thought, you know, Jeff did such a wonderful introduction. I have to read it. It's one of my favorite poems, but I have a poem called 13 Ways of Looking at Jeff Hacker. It's after Wallace Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. And Jeff actually has a poem, 13 Ways of Looking at Eddie Dowe too. So maybe you get the chance and be able to read that one. And I know a great poet, a friend of mine, Nathan Richardson, amazing guy, amazing human being who's out there playing Frederick Douglass around the state and the country. He's got a poem, I believe, after Wallace Stevens that he's written. He would have to, if he was here, he would have to chime in. Anyway, this is called 13 Ways of Looking at Jeff Hacker. And it's in 13 parts. I won't read the numbers. I'll just go through. And if you know the poem, I kind of follow how Wallace Stevens, sets up his stanzas. After his poetry reading, I follow the poet to his car. Aren't you the poet, Jeff Hacker? No, he replies. I am the blackbird who betrays him. In the snow-filled arms of the cedar, only the blackbird and Jeff Hecker reaching for its tail feathers. Our professor sits on her desk, uncrosses her legs, and begins a poem by Jeff Hecker, slowly falling to the floor, a single feather of the blackbird. When Jeff Hecker was a little boy, his parents, startled by sounds of pots banging in the kitchen, found him standing at the stove, boiling the blackbird. If it begins to snow without warning, it must be Jeff Hecker beginning and ending a poem with the birth of the blackbird. Mary Oliver walks through the woods, warbling for the blackbird of her poem. She finds Jeff Hecker beating it to death with a tree branch. Before the altar, Jeff Hecker tips his top hat, taps his cane, lifts his black suit tails like the wings of the blackbird. Jeff Hecker believes Edgar Allan Poe should have titled The Raven, the Blackbird, mainly for the alliteration, but also because what difference would it make? Everything I believe, so does the blackbird, Jeff Hecker tells me. I know who I am, so does the blackbird. A child finds the bones of the blackbird, asks Jeff Hecker if they should bury it. They dig a small hole, and Jeff Hecker sings, blackbird singing in the dead of night. Jeff Hecker and his wife, Robin, are one. Jeff Hecker, his wife, Robin, and the blackbird are three. If I were an animal, Jeff Hecker tells me, I would be the blackbird accidentally flown into the American flag furled at half-mast. It is not the shadow of the blackbird Jeff Hecker watches, but the shadow of Jeff Hecker, the blackbird watches. All right. Final poem, y'all. Coming up on the 7:40. Jeff will have a few questions. Maybe some of y'all stick around, have a question or two. So this is the title poem. Thanks again to everyone who's come out. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. All right, so I have to tell you something. I will die at the end of this poem, my breath dressed in vodka, a blue meadow gathered around my bed. So I should tell you something. Your mouth is a red ribbon in a field of sunlight. When I die, the animals of my body will shake their skins and rise out of the sheets like a zoo on a Saturday. My teeth, a chattering canopy of startled birds, caged owls, my rolling eyes, fingers crawling tarantulas, my tongue a fish flopping toward the toilet, even my organs, the heart a sponge in a red sea, the liver a dying horse drinking from a stream, the lungs two bats dragging their wings. I'm sorry you will see this. I didn't know you would be here, leaning over the graveyard of this poem. But here's a window. I'm pulling the curtains back. Do you see how the wind tears the white dress from the clothesline, whips it above the houses? See the man across the street unlocking his door? He believes the dress is the moon. All right, y'all. I hope that was probably enough. That was
Wish we
enough.
had more time, Eddie. I really do. That was absolutely absolutely beautiful. Absolutely. If I'm ever arrested for a poem like Lorca, it's going to be the Blackbird poem, by the way. So when they drag me away, that would be like, Eddie wrote that. It wasn't me. So we have some questions. This is good. They're coming in. They're coming in fast and furious, Ed. So so what's your writing process like? And do you find it better to block out time to do it, or just let the inspiration hit you, essentially?
My writing process is extremely slow. I do a couple different things. I like to do stream of consciousness, where I just get on my my computer, get on the keypad, and just hammer out as many words as I can think, and whatever just comes to my mind, I throw it out there. That makes it difficult because you got to go back through those 500 to 1,000 words and figure out what works and what doesn't. Plus, I'm just really obsessed with individual lines and whether they work. And so, I could write a couple of lines and just sit there for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, just thinking about one particular line, which is, which any poet will tell you is just normal for them. I think my time period just extends beyond that. But I know poets will tell you, some of the great poets out there, they'll spend years and years and years. But I don't know. I mean, if I think of something that's interesting, I definitely write it down. I journal every day. And so journaling, I think, is important, just keeping track of what's going on in my life. And one of the things I'm going to start doing, obviously, with my new focus on family heritage, and the next collection I'll work on will be to go back and listen to some of the interviews I've conducted with my parents and some other family members.
And there's a follow-up question by the same person. From what do you find the most inspiration?
I guess that not knowing anything. not knowing really, I'm a big fan of just realizing that, I don't have any answers. And so, which is, some people will tell you I play devil's advocate all the time. And that's because I'm not content with any given answer. And I honestly don't think that there is any one good answer. And this isn't a very philosophical answer to give you right now, but I guess I'm just looking for something. I don't know what it is, but maybe I'm looking for myself. Maybe I'm looking for where I stand with other people. I mean, there's so many answers to that question. I can see some questions too there, Jeff, and I see Shauna. She's asked, what kept you going? What made it all worth it? You did, Shauna. One of the best students I've ever taught. Okay, go ahead.
Here we
Jeff.
go. Okay, no, I'm sorry. You want to roll? What's your favorite poem you've written?
I don't know. I think Bank Robber's Note, if I had to pick one, that's one of my favorites. Burden is another one of my favorites. Yeah.
Those are good choices. Probably the one you're working on right now too. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the impetus for The Story I Am Told? And did you drink turpentine?
I have no clue if I drink turpentine. That's what I'm told, right? That's what I'm told I did. I find it hard to believe my brother actually ripped a racquetball in half and made it into a cup, and then began pouring water down my throat. I mean, if he was near a sink, you're telling me there were no cups, but maybe he did, but who knows, right? My brother would have been maybe 13 at the time. And so, you have to ask, like, how accurate is his memory, but I'll take it as his truth. And, to a certain extent, it's become my truth, but I appreciate my brother and love him. I know that he would have done anything to save me, basically to save himself, because if I had died, my parents would have killed him.
Yeah, what are brothers for, right? If not to put your life in danger every day.
Yeah.
So what inspired the poem Genesis?
Genesis was, again, like I said, just kind of just like my own rebirth, I mean, in a relationship, you have to become someone else, I think. A lot of people will argue, like, I am who I am, and I'm not going to change for anyone. And that's fine. People believe what they believe, but and I know it's difficult, and I might be a hypocrite right now, but I think and we all are. But do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes, like Whitman said, right? But I mean, I think we should be at least desiring to change, and not stuck in some sort of dogma. But I think that's where that poem originates from, just the desire to change. I see Noah's question here.
Yeah, let's do Noah's. Hey, Noah. I'm glad you could join us, man.
Invitation only. I don't know where it came from. I mean, at some point I thought, well, what if I invited a bunch of poets to a party? And that's just essentially where the idea came from. Let me just invite all these poems. And matter of fact, that poem has extended so much. I mean, I've been inviting more poets. Like when it originally was written, I just keep adding poets, and ultimately I will. I don't know if that means that like a part 2 invitation only, but or I just revise it and just keep adding poets to the list. But I'll be, I mean, there are a ton of poets that need to be invited and we're not. So maybe there's a poem like about who was not invited in some way or form. So yeah.
Yeah, Eddie was revising that to the day he had to basically, give it to the publisher. I think he was still changing things all the way till the end. So
For sure.
typical Eddie. How do you know or decide when you're done with the revision process? That's a good question.
I don't. Sorry, Lana. I really don't. I mean, look, I remember Tim Siebels and Luisa Gloria both said on numerous occasions, I can remember them saying that it's done when it's at some point. It's not necessarily done, but at some point you wish it well. You send it off to be published or what have you. You know what I mean? So I don't know if anything's ever done. But sometimes maybe it is. I mean, sometimes, you don't come back to it, you've moved on to something else and it's done in that sense. But I mean, when a reader comes to a poem, right, it's not done. The poem's never done because the reader is going to take that poem and if he or she likes it, they're going to do something different with it, right, with their own experiences. So, whatever the poem I think is, that you read is not the poem that I created in a sense, right? You're recreating it. You're making it your own for a moment, or if it stays with you, then it becomes something different than maybe even I intended, I guess.
I like Jason's question too here. This is a really interesting one. Do you think about your poems and revising them in your downtimes, like outings with friends?
Yeah, I suppose I definitely do, to a certain extent. One of the things that I'll definitely do is that I'm interested in is stealing people's conversations and turning them into poems. So that's something I'll be working on.
Yeah, you could do that anytime, right? That would be an interesting experiment. This comes from Noah. Hey, Noah. Congrats to Noah, by the way, who just graduated.
Yeah, my son is an amazing person with an amazing girlfriend. They're just the greatest people. My dream poetry reading. I mean, and this follows with Sue's question, is there a poet who's inspired you? So Noah, I would say that I love you too, buddy. I would say that, I don't know, I was definitely heavily influenced by Mark Strand and Gregory Orr. So, I always had this idea that I'd go on a pilgrimage to see Mark Strand before, before he passed, obviously, unfortunately. I mean, it's been a number of years now, but I would love to have seen him read or actually kick some poems to him. But I did hear a story one time that I don't think Mark would have been too kind with my work. He would have been critical. So I'm not sure I would have wanted Mark Strand to actually read anything I'd written. He would have probably just said, "What are you trying to imitate me?" You know, who knows? But Mark Strand was a big influence.
This is a good one from Michael Condowall.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to emerging poets who want to publish?
Well, yeah, I love that question. And so, I've been teaching for 21 years, and I've taught creative writing for most of those years, not in the last 3 or 4 years. But listen, we at the high school level, we have to establish a relationship with colleges and college professors. We really do. There are high school students who need to be exposed to those writers. And a number of people, Tim, Louisa, have come into my classroom many times, and they've agreed, Noah Wren, and and you, Jeff, and that is extremely important. But we don't have a lot of teachers reaching out to college professors and vice versa. And I think more of a relationship needs to be established there. But besides that, listen, I've realized when you give a high school student the hope that he or she can write and has ultimately something important to say, that invests them in becoming not necessarily creative writers, but just simply speaking out, speaking their truth, which is one of the catchphrases that you hear a lot of people talking about today. And I think that that's what we need to do. Look, I start my class with a poem of the day, pretty much every class. Sometimes I miss a class, but you have to use spoken word poetry as a teacher. You have to give students hope that they can also say something important, that they have a voice. If you're shutting that down, so ultimately, I don't know if I'm ranting now, but in terms of publishing, everybody can do it. I mean, I take a look at the stuff I wrote in high school, and my God, I mean, Shauna, one of my students, and Kirkland this year, and Marjorie, and I saw Gabby was on here. My goodness, I mean, you take those high school writers, holy smokes. I mean, what they were writing in high school compared to what I was writing was just absolutely amazing. It's almost like you could look at writers like the 4 I just mentioned, Gabby and Shauna, and say, man, that they're going to do, and Marjorie, they're going to do unbelievable things as writers. And even if they don't go on to publish, that's not, hopefully they keep poetry in their lives in some way. You don't have to publish that, you don't have to do that, but you can definitely find some joy and some tears, right? I mean, go to poetry. It's Mary Oliver called it, the bread, right? The necessary bread. And yeah, you don't have to necessarily publish. That's not necessarily what's important, but just for the love of it. All right, let me stop.
Hesitant to do Jason's question, but I will. Will you ever do a poem about losing your hair? I know
yeah.
you miss it.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you. I'll use the epigraph from Crosby, Stills and Nash. Almost cut my hair. I'll use that. Riff off of that. I see you, Jason. You're funny.
See, the difference is you're growing if you grow the beard and you keep the baldness, it kind of
you don't know.
It completely
you pay attention to the beard.
Completely levels itself out. So that there's
now I got the glasses. I mean, what do you
It's a win-win for all.
Yeah, it's Jeff. What do you have time for? Like one more question?
Yeah, let's do a couple more. This is interesting. Who do you aspire to be like?
I don't know. I aspire to be. I aspire to be like my son.
That's a good answer.
That's true, actually. But yeah, I don't know. I aspire to be. I don't have an answer for that other than yeah, I do aspire to be like my son. But set your bar higher. Come on. But no, I mean I don't know, man. I am who I am.
It's funny, when I first saw Noah, he was like this tall,
Yeah,
and he was playing with his toys. And I remember looking at him, I was thinking, oh, he's definitely going to do something good. You kind of get this sense when you see somebody for the first time, even if they're small, they're about to do something incredible. So you
yeah.
kind of get a sense, he kind of had it all along. Have you written any poems centered around your experiences as a teacher? Lots of
Yeah. I mean, I've written a couple drafts, but no, that's a tough one. Yeah, I haven't really gone too much into that experience. Although Lisa, I've definitely thought about doing that for sure. I've written a couple. I've written a couple poems. I remember I sent one to. There you go, Terry. I hear you. Yeah, I wrote. I wrote one and I sent it to like the National Council of Teachers of English, and they liked it, but it was a bit dark. So they said, "Do you have anything else?" I think like I don't know. I don't want to go into the poem, but yeah, I was like, oh yeah, maybe you don't want to publish that in your journal. So I think they're looking for something a little more hopeful, and I think I am hopeful about the students I teach. That was just sometimes my work can be on the darker side, but yeah, it is what it is. So were those all the questions, Jeff? Because I see we're almost out of time.
Yeah, let me just ask one more. This
All
one's
right.
coming. This comes from me.
Okay.
So, and I just want to thank everybody for doing this and joining us tonight, especially those who are coming from Iceland. What an honor for you guys to join us and be part of this. This is incredible that you guys are taking the time. I think 4 hours ahead, right, Eddie? 4 hours
Yes.
ahead of where
Yeah.
for staying up late and doing this with us. It's a real honor and a treat for you guys to do this with us. So the poem South China Main is kind of a departure poem for you, meaning it seems to be involved with a different set of motives and tactics. Do you think you'll write more about your personal family heritage?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that's going to definitely be my focus. I need to definitely start writing about Iceland and South China Main and my family. And I mean, look, I keep, I have a hallway with pictures from family members going back to the 1800s and old black and whites, and it's fascinating to me, right? And I think it's important to know about those family members and to keep that heritage, right? So long as men can breathe and eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Shakespeare writing about in Sonnet 18, that final rhyming couplet. That that's one way to, I don't know, keep people alive in a sense, right? But I mean, I think that it's our hope to be remembered to have done something worthy and beneficial to other people. And I think that's the end goal, to somehow make a positive difference. And I think writing can do that, but definitely writing about those who came before us, whether those things that their lives were um, joyful or even violent. It is, it's important to write about it at least, and to kind of tap that well. So yeah, I mean, and so Jeff, I'd also say like, thank you to everybody. I want to say, I know Louisa posted in the chat for the young poets who are here. I know I talked to a few of my students about this. The young poets in the community. And if you check the chat, Louisa put the link there, and check that link out, because the Poetry Society of Virginia, with Louisa, who is the current Virginia Poet Laureate, we're looking for young poets, and you get paid to come up with a poetry project. And if you go to that site, you can learn all about it. So any young poets out there, definitely check out that link.
Absolutely. And Eddie, just to sign off, to plug your book. Tell everybody
Yeah,
where
yeah,
they can
yeah.
where can they get it? A couple of
Yeah,
different places, and that way
sure.
everybody can pick one up after this reading.
Yeah, it's Kelsay Books. So if you, it's there it is in the chat, kelsaybooks.com. You can get it on Amazon. Also, I'd love to, and there it is right there. That artwork, that cover art is by Nicole Hart. And you can check out, she's a local, amazing local artist and teacher. And you can check her out at NicoleHart.com. She's got a ton of work. You can purchase work from her site. I was so thankful that she put her artwork on my cover. That was an amazing thing. So I really appreciate that. And Kelsay Books, anybody who gets it, I really appreciate your support. And again, thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Thanks everybody for attending tonight. I really appreciate you guys doing this with us. Hope everybody has a good rest of the week.
Thank you.